You're standing on the dock, the printed listing curling in your hand, and the boat in front of you looks like pure freedom. 30 feet of fiberglass, a price that finally fits your savings, and the dream of slipping the lines alone. But the boat that sails itself at 3 in the morning when your arms are dead is almost never the boat in the glossy photo. I know because I bought the wrong one first. I paid $38,000 for a boat that looked perfect and fought me every single mile. Here is the honest claim I want you to sit with before you write any check. 6 Pacific boats, built by people who actually understood a person sailing alone, will get you cruising for less money and less heartbreak than the fast, fashionable coastal boats everyone tells you to buy. I owned the wrong boat before I owned the right one, and the difference cost me 2 seasons and about $11,000 in lessons. Stay with me, because at the end I am going to hand you a single number you can calculate on your own short list tonight, a number that came out of the 1979 Fastnet disaster and that no broker will ever mention. It works whether this is your first cruising boat or your second, and it separates the boats that hold you from the boats that flip you. Let me take you back to the mistake first, because the mistake is where the whole map comes from. The boat I bought first was fast and beamy and modern, the kind of hull that wins the Marina Beauty contest. It had a fin keel, a spade rudder, and a cockpit big enough for a dinner party. On paper, it was wonderful. The first time I tried to sail it alone overnight, I understood what nobody had told me. A wide, light, flat boat does not want to sit still. It rolls, it rounds up, it demands your hand on the tiller like a nervous horse. I could not leave the helm for 90 seconds to make coffee without the boat trying to spin into the wind. Solo sailing on that boat meant no sleep, no rest, no peace. And peace is the entire reason a person sails alone. So I sold it, and I lost about $7,000 in the sale, and I started studying the boats that old single-handers actually kept for decades. That study is what I am giving you now. The first boat on my honest list is the Albin Vega 27, and I want you to stop scrolling past it just because it is small and old. This is a Swedish boat designed by Per Brohall, built by Albin Vega from about 1966 through 1979. They made more than 3,400 of them, which by itself tells you something. Boats that are miserable do not get built 3,000 times. The Vega has a long fin with an attached rudder, a moderate beam, and a hull shape that tracks like it is on rails. Here is what nobody told me about the Vega until I sailed one. You can trim the sails, tie off the tiller with a length of shock cord, and the boat will hold her course for miles while you go below. That is not magic. That is hull balance, designed into her in 1966 by a man who understood that a tired sailor is a dangerous sailor. People have crossed oceans in these boats. One sailed around the world, and you can still find a decent Vega today for somewhere between $8,000 and $18,000. But here is the confession, and here is where you have to be careful. The Vega has a weakness that hides in plain sight. The original fuel tank on many of them was galvanized steel, tucked under the cockpit, and after 40 years, those tanks corrode and weep diesel into the bilge. I looked at one where the owner swore the engine ran perfect. It did. But the tank was seeping, and replacing it properly meant cutting into the cockpit, and that is a $2,000 to $3,000 job once you count labor. So on any Vega, before you fall in love, you get down on your knees with a flashlight and you smell the bilge. If it smells like a gas station, you walk or you negotiate hard. The Vega teaches you the first honest lesson of solo cruising. The boat has to hold her own course. Therefore, the next question becomes bigger and scarier. What happens when the wind actually pipes up and you are alone and it is dark? Because tracking flat in 10 knots is easy. Holding together in 30 is a different boat entirely. That brings me to the second boat and to a designer whose name you should tattoo on your shopping list, Carl Alberg. He was a Swedish-born designer working in America, and the Alberg 30, built by Whitby Boatworks in Canada from 1962 all the way to 1984, is one of the most quietly capable solo cruisers ever made. More than 700 of them were built over 22 years. 22 years of production. Think about what that means. A boat has to be right to survive that long without a redesign. The Alberg 30 has a full keel, a heavy displacement for her length, and a narrow beam of about 8 feet 9 inches. Now, modern buyers hear narrow and they flinch. They have been trained to want beam because beam means interior volume and interior volume sells. But here is the truth that cost me money to learn. A narrow, heavy hull has an easy motion in a seaway. She heels, she settles, and she stays there. A wide, light hull slams and rolls and wears you out. When you are alone for 3 days, motion is not a luxury. Motion is whether you arrive, rested, or wrecked. I sailed an Alberg 30 in a building breeze off the coast, and I remember standing in the companionway with a cup of coffee that did not spill. In conditions where my first boat would have thrown that coffee across the cabin, that was the moment the whole thing clicked for me. But I have to warn you about the Alberg, because I have seen buyers get burned. These boats are old now, all of them, and the original chain plates are often the factory bronze or steel, buried behind the interior bulkheads. Chain plates are the metal straps that hold your rigging to the hull, and when they fail, the mast comes down. On a 50 or 60-year-old boat, if the chain plates have never been pulled and inspected, you are gambling with the entire rig. Pulling and replacing all of them runs anywhere from $2,500 to $5,000 depending on the yard. So when you look at an Alberg or any boat from this era, you ask one question and you watch the seller's face. When were the chain plates last removed and inspected? If the answer is a shrug, that shrug is worth thousands of dollars in your negotiation. So now you have a boat that tracks and a boat with an easy motion. Therefore, the fear gets sharper, because a heavy old boat is only a bargain if the deck under your feet is still solid. And this is where most of the real money disappears, in a place you cannot see from the dock. Let me tell you about the third boat, and this one is small and precious, and I love it more than I should. The Pacific Seacraft Dana 24, designed by Lyle Hess. Lyle Hess is a name that should mean everything to a solo cruiser. He designed the boats that Larry and Lynn Party sailed around the world with no engine at all. The Dana 24 is only 24 feet on deck, but she is built like a small ship, heavy, full keel, a bowsprit, and a cutter rig that lets you break the sail plan into small, manageable pieces. That last part matters more than anything for solo sailing, and nobody explains it. A cutter rig means 2 smaller head sails instead of 1 giant one. When you are alone and the wind builds, you do not want to wrestle a huge Genoa. You want small sails you can handle with 2 hands and a tired back. The Dana lets you roll up the outer sail and keep the small staysail in the reefed main, and suddenly the boat is balanced and calm, and you are not fighting anything. Here is the confession on the Dana, though. These boats hold their value like almost nothing else on the used market. A good one from the 1990s can still ask $40,000 to $70,000, which for a 24-foot boat sounds insane until you sail one. But that strong resale is also a trap, because it means people cut corners on maintenance knowing they can still sell high. I looked at a Dana where the owner had let the bronze floors, the structural pieces down in the bilge, sit in salt water for years. Surface corrosion on bronze is normal, deep pitting is not. So you get a flashlight into that bilge and you look at the structure, not just the shiny topsides. Now here is where I need you to lean in, because the next few minutes are specifically for the people watching who already own a cruising boat and are thinking this video is only for first-time buyers. Stay with me, because this is the part you can walk down to your own boat and check this weekend with no broker and no haul out. Everything I just said about the Dana, about the Alberg, about deck cores and hidden water applies to the boat you already own right now. And here is the free test that saved me from a 5-figure repair. Take a plastic mallet or even the handle of a screwdriver and walk your deck tapping every few inches, especially around the stanchion bases, the cleats, the chain plates, and around every place where a fitting is bolted through the deck. A solid, dry deck rings back at you with a sharp, hard sound. A wet, rotten core answers with a dull thud, like knocking on a watermelon. That dull sound is water that got in through an old bedding compound and soaked the balsa or plywood core inside your deck. I did this on a boat I already owned and thought was perfect, and I found a soft patch the size of a dinner plate around the forward chain plate. Caught early, I dried it and rebedded the fitting for the cost of a tube of sealant and a Saturday afternoon. Caught 2 years later, That same spot would have meant cutting open the deck, digging out wet core, and relaminating, a job that easily runs $3,000 to $6,000 at a yard. So if you own a boat right now, pause this, go tap your deck, and listen for the watermelon. That one sound is the difference between a weekend and a wallet. And while you are down there, do the smell test I mentioned on the Vega, and put your hand on your chain plates and look for rust streaks running down from the bolts. Picture yourself kneeling in that bilge with the flashlight, tapping the deck, smelling for diesel, wishing you had one clean place that held every number, every checklist, every hidden cost in one honest stack instead of scattered forum threads. That is exactly what the Complete Sail Smart System is. It is a 3-volume digital pack you download instantly, and it lays out the real cost architecture of owning a boat that nobody posts online, the 6 blue water ready boats and exactly what they share, and a forensic comparison of catamaran versus monohull with no mythology attached. It even gives you the asset decision framework. One model you can use for a boat, for your home energy, for any big purchase where a broker would rather you guess. And you do not have to take my word on the size of it. Tonight, before you sleep, open the collection and count for yourself the 406 pages of real content, the landing promises, so you know the depth is there before you trust it on your own short list. The fastest way to get the books is to scan the QR code right there on your screen, or go to the link in the description or the pinned comment. This matters right now because the boat you already own is costing you money every season. You sail it blind, and the sooner you catch a problem, the cheaper it stays. So grab your flashlight and stay with me, because right now I want you to put your hand on your chain plates and look for the one thing sellers hope you never notice. These are things you can do today, for free, on the boat you already have. Because the honest truth of cruising is that the boat you own is always cheaper to maintain than the boat you buy, if you catch the problems while they are still small. Now, back to the short list. Because we have covered small and we have covered easy motion, but we have not yet talked about a boat that will genuinely keep you alive when the weather turns bad and you are alone and there is no help coming. Therefore, we have to talk about the boat that survived the worst offshore race in modern history. The fourth boat is the Contessa 32, and this boat has a story that should be in every buyer's mind. Designed by David Sadler and built in England starting in 1971, the Contessa 32 is a narrow, deep, heavy little boat with a long fin keel. In August of 1979, the Fastnet race off the coast of England and Ireland was hit by a storm that nobody saw coming. A full gale exploded over a fleet of more than 300 boats. 15 sailors died, boats were rolled, dismasted, and abandoned. It remains one of the worst disasters in the history of the sport. In the smallest class of that race, Class 5, dozens of boats started. Only one boat in that entire class finished the race. It was a Contessa 32 named Ascent, sailed by a man named Willie Kerr. While bigger, more modern boats were being abandoned around her, that little Contessa took the storm and kept going. That is not marketing. That is the historical record. So what does that mean for you, standing on the dock with your savings? It means the Contessa 32 is proof that a well-designed, narrow, heavy boat is safer alone in bad weather than a bigger, wider, more expensive boat. You can find used Contessa 32s today for somewhere between $15,000 and $35,000. That is a boat that survived the Fastnet for the price of a used pickup truck. But I promised you honesty, so here is the catch. The Contessa 32 is a narrow boat, and down below she feels narrow. There is no wide open saloon, no walk-in shower, none of the condo-style interior that modern buyers expect. And the older ones can have issues where the hull-to-deck joint was fastened, so you check for leaks along the tow rail where the deck meets the hull. But if you want a boat that will look after you when it is you against the ocean, this is a boat that has already proven it in the worst possible conditions. And no glossy new coastal cruiser can say that, so we have safety in a storm. But I can already hear the objection forming in your mind, the same one that nearly stopped me. What about comfort on the long haul? What about the boat you actually live on for months, not just survive a gale in? Because a boat that keeps you alive but makes you miserable is a boat you will sell. Therefore, the fifth boat has to answer both. The fifth boat is the Pacific Seacraft 34, designed by William Crelock, and this is the boat I wish I had bought first. William Crelock was a British-trained naval architect who spent his life thinking about one thing above all others: the motion of a boat in a seaway. He wrote about it. He designed the canoe stern, that beautiful pointed back end, not for looks but because it lets a following sea pass under the boat instead of slapping and shoving her around. When you are running downwind alone for days, that motion is the difference between rest and exhaustion. The Pacific Seacraft 34 was built in California, and the company had a reputation for build quality that survivors talk about with real reverence. Hand-laid solid glass hulls, bronze seacocks, proper bulkheads bonded to the hull. These boats were expensive, new, and they hold value used. So expect to pay anywhere from $60,000 to over $100,000 depending on year and condition. That is real money. But here is why I put it on the honest list. When you buy a boat like this, you are buying decades of sailing without a major structural refit. And that is where the true cost of cheaper boats hides. Because here is the math nobody does for you. I have watched buyers save $40,000 on the purchase price of a tired boat and then spend $60,000 over 5 years just to get it back to sea. A cheaper boat is not cheaper if it is a project that never ends. The Crelock is the opposite. You pay more up front, and then the boat simply works. For a solo sailor who wants to actually go, not spend every weekend in the yard, that trade can be the sanest money you ever spend. But even a Crelock has a place you have to check, because I do not want you trusting a reputation blindly. On these older Pacific Seacrafts, look hard at the chainplate knees and the areas where the deck hardware is through-bolted, and check the age of the standing rigging. Rigging wire has a working life, and most surveyors and insurers will tell you to replace it around every 10 to 15 years, regardless of how it looks. A full re-rig on a 34-foot boat can run $5,000 to $9,000. If the rig is original from the 1990s and has never been replaced, that is not a deal breaker, but it is a number that belongs in your negotiation because you will be paying it soon, whether you like it or not. Now, the sixth boat, and this one is the wild card, the boat that breaks the rules, the one I would tell a friend to look at if they wanted something different. The Norse 27, another Lyle Hess design, and the special thing about this boat is that it was built to be trailerable. 27 feet of real, full keel, ocean-capable cruiser on a beam narrow enough to pull down the highway behind a truck. People have sailed these across oceans, and people have also trailered them from one coast to the other to skip 1,000 miles of hard sailing. For a solo cruiser, that changes everything about the math. You can keep the boat in your yard instead of paying dock fees. You can haul it home to do the work yourself in your own driveway instead of paying yard rates. Dock and storage fees alone can run $3,000 to $8,000 a year in a lot of places, so a boat you can keep at home quietly saves you a fortune every single season. Used Norse 27s tend to run from about $25,000 to $50,000, and the aft cockpit versions are the ones long-distance sailors tend to prefer. The confession on the Norse is simple. Because they were often trailered and owner-maintained, the quality of any individual boat depends enormously on who owned it. Some are pampered jewels, some were neglected on a trailer under a tree for a decade. So with this boat more than any other, you buy the owner as much as the boat. You want the maintenance logs, the receipts, the photos of past work. A boat with a fat folder of records is worth thousands more than an identical boat with no history, because that folder is proof the hidden things were cared for. So there they are. The Albin Vega 27, the Alberg 30, the Pacific Seacraft Dana 24, the Contessa 32, the Pacific Seacraft 34, and the Norse 27. 6 honest boats, each one designed by someone who understood that a person alone at sea needs a boat that helps instead of fights. Every one of them costs less to own over 10 years than the flashy modern boat that seduced me first and bled me dry. But I promised you something at the very start, and now it is time to deliver it. Because a list of 6 boats is only useful if you can judge the 7th boat, the one I did not name, the one sitting in your local marina with a for sale sign that is calling your name right now. You need a tool, you need a number, and here it is. The thing that came out of that 1979 Fastnet disaster and that no sailor will ever volunteer. After 15 sailors died in that storm, the sailing world did something rare. They studied it. Technical committees, including the people who set the racing and design standards in America and Britain, dug into why some boats survived and some boats rolled over and stayed there. And out of that investigation came a simple formula that any regular person can calculate called the capsize screening value. It was designed specifically to flag boats that are too wide and too light to be safe offshore, and it is buried in technical papers where ordinary buyers never look. Here is how it works, and you can do this on a napkin. You take the boat's maximum beam in feet, then you take the boat's displacement, its actual weight, in pounds, and you divide that weight by 64, and you find the cube root of that result. Then you divide the beam by that cube root. If the final number is under 2, the boat passes. It is considered acceptable for offshore work. If the number is over 2, the boat is flagged as a higher capsize risk, the kind of wide, light hull that gets rolled and does not come back up quickly. Let me show you why this is a weapon in your hands. Take the Contessa 32, the boat that survived the Fastnet. Run her numbers, and she comes out comfortably under 2. She passes with room to spare, and now you understand mathematically why she lived through that storm. Now run the numbers on a wide, modern, light coastal cruiser, the kind with a huge cockpit and the condo interior, and you will very often get a number well over 2. My first boat, the one that cost me $7,000 to escape, would have failed this test before I ever wrote the check. The information existed in 1979. It was written down. It was preserved in the technical record. I just did not know to look for it. Now you do. Every displacement and beam figure you need is printed in the boat's specifications, in the old brochures, in the owner forums, in the survey. You do not need a broker. You do not need a naval architect. You need a calculator and 5 minutes. And when a seller is standing there telling you what a safe, able boat he has, you can quietly run the number yourself and know whether he is telling you the truth or telling you a story. Now, I want to be honest about the limits, because I will not oversell you the way the brokers do. This one number is a screening tool, not the whole survey. It does not measure how the boat was built, whether the core is wet, whether the chain plates are cracked, or whether that fuel tank is weeping diesel into the bilge. It is the first filter, not the last word. But it is the filter that would have saved me 2 seasons and $11,000, and it is the filter that instantly tells you whether the pretty boat in the listing was designed to bring you home or designed to win a Marina Beauty contest. So here's what I want you to feel as you close this out. You do not have to be the person who finds out the truth after the money is gone. That was me. I stood on that dock proud of my fast, beautiful, wide-open boat, and the ocean taught me, alone and in the dark, that beautiful and safe are not the same thing. You get to skip that lesson. You get to run the number, tap the deck, smell the bilge, and check the chain plates before you ever sign. You are the kind of buyer who does the homework before the money moves, or you would not have stayed with me this long. That instinct, that refusal to trust the glossy photo, is exactly what keeps a sailor from making a 6-figure mistake. Trust it. So tell me one thing down in the comments. Which boat on your own short list are you about to run through that capsize number, and what did you get? Name the boat, name the year, and tell me where you are watching from. Because I read these and I answer them, and I have probably already looked at the exact model you are considering. If it flagged over 2, say so, and let me talk you through it before you write anything. And if you are done getting your knowledge from people who profit the moment you sign, stay with this channel, because we are a group of buyers who refuse to get burned. Next time I am pulling apart the single most expensive hidden repair on a used cruiser, the one that hides behind a fresh coat of bilge paint, the one that turns a $20,000 bargain into a $50,000 regret. I found it on a boat I almost bought, and I will show you exactly where it hides. Do the homework, run the number, and do not let anyone sell you a story when the truth is sitting right there in the specifications, waiting for you to do the math. This video gave you the shape of it, but for the rest, come inside the cruising compass, picking up right where we stopped tonight. In there, you can ask me your own question, and I answer you myself, no robot. Sailboat buyers just like you are already aboard, so you're not alone. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen and cancel anytime with one click. I'm Marcus. Come sail with me. Now, picking the right boat is only half the story. The next video shows you how to get into cruising without draining your savings, so you can sail sooner and worry less. It's starting right here.